everyone. This is my second podcast. This time it's on video. And I'll take off from where I was last time. I had done an introduction of myself as a midwife here in Auroville, practicing for over 35 years in the United States and Canada and here. And I'm kind of, in this podcast, hoping to do some reflection on what I've seen in my experience that helps pregnant women, new families, the development of the inner being as people become parents. So I have an eye to that which is spiritual, that which is from the heart, that which really gives meaning to the birthing process, to child rearing in a spiritual context and a context of awakening consciousness. So just kind of an expansion of our awareness and through the parenting process, through the becoming of a parent. Today, I'll just start by doing a little bit of an overview of where I'm at, the lens that I'm using right now. So right now, as a midwife in India, in Tamil Nadu, what I'm experiencing is a transition from here in Auroville. We used to have home births that were very delightful and very empowered and peaceful in the home with the partner, in a woman's own environment, in her own castle, let's say. And so the government of Tamil Nadu would really like to have births institutionalized 100%. And there are a few reasons for that. There's still a concern around female infanticide. There's still a concern around general population health. And I guess there's some other political reasons for this. There was some financial reasons why Indian policies have turned to making sure that there was more control over the birthing process. I don't think it was entirely nasty or bad, but because there's such high numbers here and not a lot of practitioners for the high numbers of birthing mothers, the process has been shuttled over to institutionalized birth, hospital births. And so from my lens, that's a sadness because I really enjoyed the beauty and the power and intimacy of natural birth done at home. And at the same time, I'm seeing this as just a transition. I'm seeing this as a few years until India catches up to, and Indian women and families catch up to what would be most ideal for the birth of a soul into the world, and that we might have more midwives that are nicely trained, that can really help attend to that psycho-spiritual process. So in the context that I'm working with right now is like, how do we do our best around a birth that's done in the hospital with hospital protocols that is most honoring of women and their babies as they come into this world. And so in last podcast, I was talking about mother-friendly hospitals, baby-friendly hospitals, and the parameters for that. So to review, a mother-friendly hospital would allow the mother to have a companion by her side, like her husband and or a birth doula who is a professional birth attendant who really understands medicine and how they're viewing things, so she can communicate with the mother and is very soothing and loving of the mother, so she can just open up and be in her process in a natural way. So doulas would reduce a cesarean rate by 50%. Just that extra love, care, knowledge would really help. And also having a loving partner who has had some childbirth education, one's husband or one's mother, or has some understanding of the process, so that they're relaxed in the room and can keep that center for the mother. That would be a mother-friendly hospital would first allow for that. But many in the hospitals, especially government hospitals, that kind of company is not allowed because it's done in big rooms, not individualized rooms. So there's other women laboring, so they can't allow people by their side. And so that is a hardship, I believe, for moms. And then also because of that setting where there's no privacy, no curtains, no alone space. Mothers aren't really able to walk around the room and use their body in motion, which really helps labor. If you were to compare that with a home birth, it really helps to be able to squat and move and lean over the bed and go into the bathroom and move through space, so the hips have a chance to really move, the legs, the back. You can be on all fours. These are all kind of natural positions that help the baby kind of wiggle down through the pelvis and out the vagina, because there's movement. And what we see in many births in the hospital is that the movement has been constricted for many women, and that's very hard on the pelvis. If you're on your back, it makes the pelvis about 30% smaller, and it's more painful to deliver that way. And yet, many physicians are still trained just to do back labors or upright labors, semi-seated, which aren't optimal. Optimal labor is probably squatting, probably on hands and knees, delivered from behind, the baby coming from behind. And that's a lot easier on the body, less pain. And so my wish is that eventually all hospitals in India will allow for women to move the way they need to move during labor, and are able to be kind of in a loving flow with their partner, and that would be what we see. And just because of those two first things aren't readily met in institutionalized births here in India, we have to kind of work around and go deeper, let's say. So when we're doing childbirth classes here in Auroville, we not only have women go through a birth plan as to the things they'd like to discuss with their care provider, with their doctor, say, I'd like to be able to eat and drink as much as I want to during my labor. I'd like to, as much as possible, move. I'd like to bring a physio ball or be on a ball so I can sit and move my hips. I'd like to not have an episiotomy. These are all things that would be in a mother-friendly hospital. Episiotomy is a cut that's done from the vagina towards the side of the rectum. And often it's done here at the last minute as the baby's being born, without permission from the mother, and can be kind of shocking and surprising in some ways. And those episiotomies are not evidence-based medical practice, and so women who do some learning about that would make the request to their doctor on their birth plan to not have that done. And so there's a few other things that there would be requests for, as far as how they're being treated in labor, and then also for a baby-friendly hospital, you would, once the baby is born, you'd not cut the baby's cord so that the baby can get that last third of their blood supply, which is oxygenated blood from the placenta to the baby's body. Here what they do is they cut the cord immediately, which kind of deprives the baby of a good start. So the evidence around that is that it's far better to wait till the cord stops pulsing, because the placenta is still inside the body, still pulsing blood to the baby. So wait till that is done and the placenta is starting to come off easily off the uterine wall. So the mother who's putting her birth plan together would put that in there. Please don't cut the baby's cord right away. And then please put the baby straight onto the belly. Don't take the baby away if it's breathing fine or if it doesn't have big breathing issues. Put the baby straight to the mama's belly. And if the cord is long enough, just bring it straight to the chest to start breastfeeding. Because that first hour we call the golden hour, which is when a mother and baby, the eyes are wide open, especially unmedicated babies where there wasn't anesthesia and various pain medications and things like that. A baby that's born naturally, the eyes will be wide open and will be able to look at its mother, be on its mother's heart, and feel her warmth and have all that connection, which is really important for a good start, and hear her voice, and hear if dad's in the room. Hearing father's voice, the baby really recognizes the father's voice, and it's a very powerful way to get babies to breathe. If I'm in a room and a baby doesn't start breathing very easily within the first 60 seconds, I can just talk to the dad and say, welcome your baby. And if they just say, hi, baby, we love you, we're so glad you're here, and they hear dad's voice like that, the baby will start to breathe, take in that first breath, and it's the best medicine ever. So There are things that can be done in institutionalized births that would make things more generous and open and loving for the baby. If it's planned ahead of time, if it's discussed with the doctor as to the vision of a very peaceful birth, where there's been some education, some childbirth education, where you've really learned what medicine has taught those doctors and nurses, and then how to kind of inform them about choices that aren't their usual routine, so that you're having, the baby's not taken away right away just to the warmer. Maybe they can warm the baby right upon the mother's body. So if that is all discussed beforehand, because the mother is educated. So the way I usually work with clients is, a pregnant woman would come to me maybe around her 8th week or 12th week, before 12 weeks. 12 weeks is usually when women get an ultrasound to just see. It's a way of getting the due date the most accurately. So an ultrasound done at 12 weeks, because all babies pretty much have femurs the same size, they're able to mathematically calculate what age the baby is within a 1 week parameter on either side. So that's the most accurate we can get. So remember that. So when somebody says the due date is, let's say, November 20th, it could be actually November 30th. It could be in December, the first week of December, because going 10 days late is very natural. But depending upon the hospital protocols, you might want to extend that time and ask the doctor to give you your full 41 weeks, 42 weeks post dates, which is also, especially for first-time moms, very, very normal. Most of my clients go late. But here in India, there's a lot of protocols to bring the babies out fast and early. So I've even seen inductions of labor done at 37 weeks, which is pretty early. The babies are pretty small. And that's because they're processing so many different mothers. They kind of, and the public health concern is that because there's a number of people that are not healthy, that if they pull the babies out fast for everybody soon and early, then they avoid certain problems that can happen in those last couple of weeks. But it's not necessarily good for the baby that is already healthy and growing, according to nature, and could be in utero up to 42 weeks easily. Most women will deliver before 42 weeks, maybe 42 plus 1 or 2. And that's how we've done our practice for years, is to not push things, is to trust Mother Nature. And but because we're working with hospitals now, one of the things that we do recommend for moms is to use evening primrose oil suppositories, which helps to soften the cervix, so that women could have easier first part of labor, because the cervix is dilating easier because of that. And it may even bring on labor a couple days earlier, which would save us the confrontation with hospital protocols about wanting to get babies born earlier rather than later. So depending upon your philosophy about trusting Mother Nature, wanting to go in a natural way, or, really working with the hospital and their protocols the way that they're used to, dependent upon where you're seated, you would want to learn as much as possible about the whole birthing process before, let's say, before you're 7 months pregnant. So get all your birthing classes done, do all your educating, maybe before 8 months for sure. Do all that thinking. And then how I work I'm with clients is, we do all that educating and learning and becoming relaxed with where modern medicine is, and so that we know how to navigate around it. And then that last trimester, 7 months, 8 months, 9 months, is a focus on the inner world. And so that's where I would go with women here in India, and also, clients back in the West, is how you are inside yourself, how a woman is during delivery in her own psychology affects, like what I was taught in midwifery school, and I've seen to be kind of true, is how you are with yourself psychologically is what's going to affect the birth. So people who are in fear can have a lot more pain. It's called the pain cycle. So, more fear, more pain, more fear. And you're releasing hormones like adrenalines and cortisol, and which is constricting blood vessels, which is making things more painful. So thus childbirth education, where you would learn relaxation techniques so that you can keep yourself open and fluid, and get out of that pain cycle. So that would be the value of doing all of that kind of learning, even before the last trimester, about how to be relaxed. And I certainly would say look into hypnobirthing, which is about auto-suggestion, making suggestions to your psychology inside yourself that you will have repeated so many times in practice that your subconscious will be on board for a peaceful birth. So that learning needs to happen when we're faced with medicalized birth. And so this deepening inward, where power resides around the connection to one's labor, one's body, and then ultimately some power over outcome, how the baby is born. All of that inward connecting, and that great psychology of using positive thoughts in your mind and focusing on the positive. That, like to be in labor and to go into it thinking thoughts of gratitude. Like, I'm so grateful my hormones are working for me in this. My own labor is in my own power. I don't need any oxytocin or pitocin, which is fake oxytocin, synthetic oxytocin. I don't need those things that can increase pain sensations. I can just rely on my own body's contracting and the hormones that are working so beautifully. So if you have an attitude of gratitude, that positivity throughout the labor is really, really helpful, and can help women go for the long haul. So I'm going to take a sip of water here. Some of the women can have labors that are long and some are short. And let's say a short labor for most women would be maybe 8 hours. That would be normal from beginning to end. And it would be, some women, very few have what's called a precipitous birth that's under 2 hours. So it's less than 7% of women. So for most women, throughout my career, I've really seen that it's usually somewhere between 12 and 24 hours for a first-time mother, whole labor. And then, but it's pretty normal to go to 4 days. And institutionalized birth doesn't have the patience for that. So if a woman shows up early in labor, she's more likely to have interventions, medical interventions. And so it's best to do most of the laboring at home those first days, 2 days, until really what we usually would call it is you don't go to the hospital till 511, which means you have contractions every 5 minutes. It's lasting a whole minute, not 40 seconds. And then it's been going on at least for an hour. So that's kind of an indicator of what we call active labor. So that would be the time to go to the hospital if you're wanting to go when you're in active labor. And statistically, they say that people who show up in active labor at the hospital have less medical disruptions and interventions, and less of a cesarean opportunity, and less pain. So if you stay home, for most women, let's say a typical story would be somebody calls me at 10:30 at night and say, "Oh, I think I've been having contractions for, since dinner time, very mildly, and I think this might be it." And so my advice to them is, well, let's just see. This could go away at 4 a.m, so let's not take this too seriously. And so you just practice going to sleep. And so they will, if they had taken hypnobirthing or worked with autosuggestion or affirmations, they will have practiced napping and being in a deeply relaxed state. So that evening, even though it's exciting that maybe this baby is coming tonight, maybe, we shut down the party. We say this is not the time to get excited. This is the time to store up on rest. And so we have somebody lay down, maybe with their partner, just get into a very tranquil state and see if they can make it to morning time, and make it very quietly in their bed, even while the contractions are arising. So we're working with the rhythms of the day. So now it's nighttime, now it's rest time. And so we would have somebody just kind of sleep through those contractions. Let's say the contractions happen in the beginning, it's maybe every 15 minutes, 7 minutes, 5 minutes, all over the place. It's not regulated. by 4 in the morning, it might be more regular if this is actually the day. Sometimes maybe at 4 in the morning it stops and it starts again tomorrow. So hopefully you get good rest that day. But if it really is the labor has begun, it's great to wait till sun is up, and then check in with yourself. Are the contractions happening every 5 minutes? Are they lasting a whole 60 seconds? Has this been going on at least an hour? If so, maybe you're at 2 centimeters of dilators, or 5 centimeters, or 4 centimeters. You're just still getting going, and then maybe that baby would be born the next dinner time. So she's been at it for 24 hours, let's say. So the longer you stay at home, resting, eating, drinking, sipping water in between, going to the bathroom, so that the going to the bathroom helps relieve space for the baby to descend. And you stay in the normal as long as possible until the contractions are really sturdy, and there's a couple of different places where it gets a little bit more intense. And if you're doing hypnobirthing, maybe you don't feel much at all. For my own births, I used those techniques, and it was very, very easy, very straightforward, not very painful, kind of like a sensation like menstrual cramps. But I had really trained my mind. I had done Vipassana meditation, done a few 10-day courses over time before even getting pregnant, and so that when I did another one when I was pregnant, I really had habituated my mind to what we call mindfulness. So mindfulness in labor, along with hypnobirthing, are probably some of the best techniques for labor, and that would include the capacity to have a thought go by while you're in labor. So the thought might oh, ouch, I don't like this, let's say. And then you don't grab onto the thought and say, oh, this thing is for real, it's a real thought, I'm going crazy, I'm losing my mind, this hurts so much, I'm right. And then that's just kind of munching on the thought. So mindfulness would be to, like a cloud in the sky, you see the cloud and then it just billows and passes away. So training the mind to have the habit of that, you have to repeatedly do meditations where you get used to thoughts coming and arising and passing without engaging with them. And so that mindfulness, which has an element of kindness, it has an element of compassion. So let's say a thought of fear comes up, like, oh my God, what if this labor goes on for days? Oh, I don't know. And that thought shows up. It's the ability to see, like, oh, that's a thought. I'm not that thought. It's a thought, like a thought bubble. I can just let it pass through because it's not going to be helping me. And then you add the compassion, like, yeah, my body's going through things and I need to be gentle and kind to myself. So I'll be thinking some kind thoughts. What are some kind thoughts? Like, wow, I'm doing really well. My body is strong. And then you can use your affirmations. Most women that I work with will have a pile of affirmations that they've practiced before bed every night, or as they are having naps. And so they might have words that say things like, my body is powerful, my body knows how to do this, my baby knows how to be born, I trust labor, I am at peace. Or they might just be chanting om, om through the whole thing. And so that is a redirection of the mind. So actually the fear thought might be a signal, like a bell, saying, oh, I'm experiencing kind of a tightness in my being. How can I open myself up? Oh, I can use some affirmations. I can use some positive thinking. So that kind of training of the mind really, really helps women to make it through that whole evening, where the cervix, the cervix is like a little nose inside of the vagina, and it's the opening to the uterus inside the body, where the baby will be coming through once the cervix opens from a little hole all the way to 10 centimeters, where the baby can slip through. And so that softening, so it's tissue that feels like the nose, it'll soften down to like the texture of lips, and then it'll soften down to like a thin flower petal. It'll just get softer and softer, and then it will stretch like putting on a turtleneck. And so that first evening for first-time moms might take many hours just for the softening to happen, many hours of contractions. And it might even take 2 days, and that's called prodromal labor. That's called like, okay, it's going to be a long labor, and it's just that softening that's happening. And eventually labor kicks in, and then maybe 6, 8 hours, 12 hours later, the baby's actually coming. So all of that is normal. So if a woman is able to psychologically have an inner world of confidence. That is very helpful. So if she's studied enough how labor happens, I highly recommend this old book called Spiritual Midwifery, which is a bunch of stories of women giving labor very naturally. And it's looking at their psychology. It's looking at the variations in how long labor can be. It's an old book. It's back in the 70s, written by a friend named Ina May Gaskin, who was a head midwife of this spiritual intentional community that was hippies who were doing it very naturally. They were vegetarians that were very intent on having empowered labor, where it was just between midwife, the husband or partner, and the woman in labor, and it was very intimate. And so we can see that this quietness is what really, really helped labor. Anyway, so just reading books like Spiritual Midwifery, and Ina May has another more standard book called Ina May's Guide to Childbirth. I think it's something like that. Her books allow the mind to have a trust, an internal confidence. And so you want to keep building that confidence and staying really put there, so that when you're talking to your care provider, when you're preparing, let's say around month 5, month 6, you're able to convey your desires. You're able to see if they are on board. And if they're not on board, maybe you're looking for another care provider that can follow the ethos that you're looking for, a more peaceful kind of delivery, one where you're able to be in your body the way you want to. And so you're cultivating an inner world that then is able to be projected outward to where you're giving birth, and be able to, during labor, have this connection with your inner self that has mindfulness, that has compassion, that has a kindness, that has good words to use. And all of those things affect hormones. So if we get out of the fear cycle of fear, more pain, and we move into maybe the love cycle where you're loving yourself and you have compassion and you have kind words, then you're releasing really great hormones. You're releasing more oxytocin, so baby comes a little sooner, perhaps, and you're releasing maybe some endorphins, like a runner's high. When people run past 6 miles, they start to release hormones that make them feel great. So you could have access to really good feeling hormones. You could have access to hormones that make your mind be at peace. So the more you think these thoughts, the more you're regulating your internal hormonal system. And then it's that loop is so much more helpful than the fear loop. And the fear loop gets affected by a number of things: thoughts about the practitioner, thoughts about the room, or your the duration of the labor. That's why I say, don't look at the clock, don't look at the watch. Forget, just don't care when the baby is born. Just let that. So constrictive thoughts will create more fear. So if you can start learning how to redirect your thoughts towards affirmation, towards auto-suggestion, towards a hypnobirthing practice. Now, hypnobirthing is coined by a woman named Marie Mongan from New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and I had spent some time with her. And I can give you a simple technique, that I call birthing peace technique. And it's basically this: during labor, you will have practiced this for a few months, 1 or 2 times a day before bed, when your mind is going into theta, when it's very relaxed, or in the morning when your mind is already there in a slower mode. That's when you can send signals, thoughts, back to the subconscious mind. And you are programming the subconscious mind kind of with these affirmations and these visualizations about, I give birth naturally. It's very simple and straightforward. I am completely trusting the process. I am deeply relaxed. And then you're visualizing kind of a natural anesthesia through your body, so flowing from head to toe, this kind of white light. You can visualize that. So that, you can learn hypnobirthing. There's so many different recordings that will teach you that. There's many books. Hypnobirthing, Marie Mongan's one, but there's many others. Hypnobabies. Insight Timer is an app that's free. I think they have some on there that you could just be listening to the same music over and over, and then recognizing that piece of music as my relaxation music. You could just be listening to that tune and and bring that back during more, when the contractions get more intense. You can just listen to that and remind yourself of all these affirmations. So that's kind of the beginner's version. But the birthing peace thing that I like to teach clients is basically, when a contraction arises, you would, you can call it a surge or an energy surge or a wave, or you can give it a different word than contraction. You can call it an expansion. When that is arising, the first thing to do is to, I call it mind, body, spirit. So the first thing is to relax your mind. So if those thought bubbles are coming by, you just watch the thought bubble and then you let it pass away with compassion. So the mind is relaxed. So you put it on neutral. So even though the body is doing a certain kind of tightening and the mind might go like, oh, this is hard, or I feel pain or whatever, you just relax the mind. So mind. And then body, as you're scanning your body and you're making sure that it is relaxed. So all the muscles in the body, the jaw especially, the hands, these two things are kind of connected to the cervix. They're loose. So the jaw is loose, the lips are loose, and your hands are loose, your shoulders are relaxed. So you just sink the body into the bed, or sink the body, if you're on all fours, just let all the muscles go. And a lot of people lay on the left side, which is a good side for oxygenation of the baby, and with a pillow between their legs. And they just let their muscles kind of melt into the bed. So the mind is relaxed, the body is relaxed, and then spirit, mind, body, spirit. The spirit is your breath, so it's the intake of a loving, beautiful breath, and then that spirit of just, expiration is just allowing the spirit to flow outwards, inwards, and outwards very slowly. So visualization would be, it's kind of like you're breathing in so slowly a golden thread of breath, very peacefully, and then you're breathing that out. And you're doing this during a contraction. So if you do it slowly enough, you could do it to a count of like 4 or 6, and the same for, you can even breathe a little bit longer, maybe 6, 7, 8, breath, 8 count breathing out. And you're just trying to fill your lungs as much as possible so that the diaphragm at the bottom of your lungs is kind of pushing down a little bit on the baby in the belly. And if you can use the imagery, when the belly is extended with deep breath in the lungs, it can kind of maybe pull up on the cervix, and so the baby's actually pushed down and into the turtleneck, and then just the tissue around the baby's head is stretching, so you can kind of use visualization as you're breathing that the cervix is opening, maybe very softly like butter that's melting in the sun. So you're just seeing this whole beautiful, or you could see flower petals opening around the cervix, around the baby. And you're using that inspiration and expiration, so that spirit connecting to your heart. You could be thinking thoughts of gratitude, thoughts of just forgiving the whole process. Gratitude and forgiveness are probably the two greatest ways to stay in the heart. So if you can imagine, the heart opening up, the mind being open, and then the muscles being open. So now you have an easy flow of that surge of energy of moving baby downward and outward. So one of the keys to birth is just being in a flow state. So these are just some beginning tips and ideas about how to approach labor here in India, and then they're also applicable around the world, to start developing a relationship to the self that is internal, that is deep, that is loving, that is highly compassionate. So I would spend the pregnancy looking at thought and being the kindest friend you could ever be to yourself for the rest of your life, and develop that skill of inner friendship, inner kindness, so that when thoughts are going to the negative or the constricted or the fearful or the angry, you can hold that thought inside and say, oh, I see this is going on. So it's okay to have any emotion. And when we're pregnant, we have lots of emotions because our blood volume doubles by the time we're 27 weeks. And so you feel very full, and it's kind of can feel like premenstrual syndrome, where there's some tension. Sometimes there's too many people around me. I'm already a community unto myself. You might feel these kinds of big feelings, and all feelings are okay. They're just information. So emotion is energy in motion. It's information in motion. So you take that information like, oh, I'm feeling angry about something. Let me see that anger. And you hold it like a baby and you get the information from it. You say, okay. And after you realize, oh, I'm feeling angrier because I've just judged a situation and I've judged it to be this way. That may not be the truth. Let me be curious about it. Let me go talk to whoever I'm angry at and be curious about their experience. And then you start opening up your heart, and then you let the emotion move through your system and out your system. So most disease is caused by a kind of stress of not flow. So what we're training for is flow. And so you hold that emotion and you let it pass through you. And you go back into compassion for yourself and for other. But you do give it the attention that it needs in a loving way, and then you put it away so that it's flow. So you're not kind of denying it. You're not doing what we call is kind of a spiritual bypassing, like being happy when deep down you're not. So you actually take the information and you work it through. And then you keep checking your body. So now it's like, oh, have I worked this tension through? Let's see if my body feels loose and open. So you're looking for flow. So as you progress in your pregnancy and you've become better at working with your mind, working with your emotions, so that there's more and more flow, there's more skilled communication. So if your partner makes you angry or frustrated or something's not working, you're able to use your words in a kind way where you're looking for curiosity to find out the other person's experience, curiosity about your own experience, and then you're increasing your capacity, this maturing, which you'll be doing tons of maturing when you have a baby. Is the adulting that happens very quickly after a baby arises, and now you've got a ball of needs that you need to nurture and care for. That maturation will happen. So might as well start it going during pregnancy so that you can bring that into your pregnancy, into your labor, so that you can deliver in an open flow state, and then into your first postpartum week. And so postpartum for most people is kind of like climbing a mountain, because for most babies that are being breastfed, it takes a few days to really get good at it, to get for the baby's lips to learn and mouth to learn how to get a good latch around the nipple. And so there'll be some sleeplessness as we try to feed the baby every couple hours. And so that week the baby loses weight because it's pooping out meconium, which is the stuff that's in the body. And then at the end of that first week, usually the baby gets the hang of it, the mother gets the hang of it. There's more. We're back to flow state again. And so if you've cultivated that flow state, for many women, it will be not only serve pregnancy, it'll serve the birth, and then it'll serve a postpartum to be more gentle and easeful. And so that whole cultivation of a mindful way of being during pregnancy is actually affecting the baby. So we're inviting more peaceful babies, because there is they are responding in utero, because the amniotic fluid is bathed with the hormones that the mother is experiencing. And so the studies of epigenetics actually study the environment that the baby is in and how it affects their psychology later on. And there's lots of correlations between stressors in pregnancy and what happens to the baby's development. Not to induce guilt on anybody, any mother who's under distress or anything like that, but it's to just keep being loving. So sometimes when I was pregnant, if I had a constricted, upset or frustrated thought, I would speak to the baby and say, mommy's having some trouble dealing with this emotion. It's okay. It's not about you. And then I would just kind of talk it out loud and talk and feel those feelings inside myself, and just let that flow continue to happen. So actually, in my imagination, the baby was learning from me about how to be loving with their human self, and what it's like to be an embodied human who's also spirit. So, we are spirit beings having a human experience, and so to be able to learn that balance. Okay, so I should wrap this up a little bit, and if I were to review what I've been talking about, is basically as you become pregnant and look at your options, really do the studies, look at childbirth classes, look at getting a doula, look at really informing yourself as much as possible, even before pregnancy and as you get pregnant. And then go into your intuitive body, maybe in that last trimester, really be doing hypnobirthing, maybe really getting a pile of affirmations that you can work with, learning how to relax yourself in naps during the day. I'm a big fan of naps for women who are pregnant, especially in that first trimester when they're really tired and they're building the placenta for the baby. And then train yourself to be in flow so that you can be in flow, pregnancy, birth, and then as the baby's here that first week and into the rest of their life, training yourself as a parent to just be an open flow state system. That'll launch your boat of your family. And you've used the process of becoming a parent as a process of awakening, a process of opening up and being in your heart. So that's my advice for today, my ideas for today. If you have any questions or if you have any comments, please go ahead and write to us, and I can address them in future videos. And thank you. Blessings on you. Blessings on your journey.